Now, let's talk about the signal being sent from the brain to the spinal cord and where in the brain it originates. We know this connection is vital for voluntary movement. If you sever your spinal cord, you'll be left unable to control the muscles that are driven by motor neurons, which are now unable to receive input from the brain. The main source of the brain's control over motor neurons in the spinal cord comes from a small group of areas I'll refer to collectively as motor cortex. These are located just in front of the central sulcus. Motor cortex includes several areas: the primary motor cortex, the supplementary motor area, and premotor cortex, which are collectively responsible for coordinating the activity of multiple muscles over time, and also integrating feedback from sensory systems to change your motor plan. Our behavioral goal is usually to bring some part of our body into some relationship to the outside world. For example, to grab a piece of pizza, or to not walk into the coffee table or the door frame. But which directions each of our joints need to move to accomplish that goal will depend on their initial position relative to the objects in the outside world. And of course, most of our movements involve coordinating the activity of multiple joints, each of which may involve contractions of multiple muscles, either in sequence or simultaneously. Motor cortex helps translate our high-level goals for our interactions with the world into specific patterns of muscle activation needed to accomplish these goals. How is motor cortex organized? Electrical stimulation of the motor cortex will evoke muscle contractions. And if you move the electrode to different locations within this large strip of motor cortex and note which muscles contract in response to stimulation at different locations, what you'll find is a map of the body within this area of cortex. A couple things you'll notice about this map. It isn't organized exactly like your body from top to bottom, for example. And there are discontinuities. See how the thumb is next to the forehead. Also, the amount of cortical area related to a particular muscle group has to do with the precision of motor control in those areas, rather than their size on your body. So face and hands, which we have fine motor control of, take up much larger areas of motor cortex than the torso, which we don't have much fine control over. If instead of electrically stimulating, you use your electrode to record the activity of neurons in motor cortex, you'll find that the activity of particular neurons is related to certain movement patterns. But the relationship isn't as clear-cut and simple as that between spinal motor neurons and muscle contractions of the muscles they project to. Remember, motor neurons in the spine, the activity of one neuron always corresponds to contraction of specific muscle fibers. Instead, in motor cortex, you'll find tuning for some subset of movements. So if you're recording from the arm representation and you have an animal place his hand in the center of the screen and then execute a pointing motion to one of many possible targets, you'll find that a given motor neuron is tuned to prefer some directions of motions over others. But based on the activity of just one neuron, it would be very hard to predict what movement an animal was making. Instead, you'll need to look at a pattern of activity across many cortical motor neurons. This is referred to as population coding, in which you need to consider the activity of a large population of neurons to understand the information being represented.